dog watches me with great intensity. He has eaten and he has gone on his walk, but a dog and a cat are both gamblers, and so are humans. By nature, we could be satisfied after a meal, after a good night's rest. We might think, what else do we need? But either by nature or societal impositions, we feel we must strive for more. And I'm no different. I mean, there's this part of me, this little voice. It says, you must do, you must be productive, you must complicate your life. And there's another part that sees the great works of the past that led up to this point. Part that understands this is it, there's nothing more. So many people are waiting for something more, telling themselves they'll feel better, things will be better when I have this something. And it may be, but it may not be. Everything that you have strived for better or worse, has led you to this point. You have everything you had as a child, plus more. Wisdom, experience. As the expression goes, before anything, eat, sleep, chop wood. And after anything, eat, sleep, and chop wood. I think they say before enlightenment, and I think it says something about carrying water, but you get the point. So, as always, I know nothing, and I welcome you today to this hopefully unusual episode. I hope you're all doing well. I love you all. God bless, and welcome. Now, before I go on, I want to apologize, even though it's been some week, to anyone that I offended. Clearly, I didn't mean to offend anyone individually. As I was talking about old books, nobody cares if I make fun of George Washington. Nobody cares if I make fun of some king or dictator, and nobody cares that I make fun of history. I don't know what else to do with it. But as we saw in that video, people felt personally attacked, and that's their choice, but it was not my intention. I clearly stated that I love the teachings of Jesus, and I love God. And then I proceeded to give my opinion on some books, not even the whole book, a chapter of a book. And the reaction by some was very hostile, like personal. A lot of people complained that this idea fits nicely into their idea. And that's fine. I guess it's case closed. But I was just saying that it's not case closed for me. That's all. Perhaps it will never be. So growing up with parents from two different religions, very different, although Abrahamic, or as they say, Judeo-Christian, nonetheless, different religions. And I imagined if someone would call Moses a bastard, or even Abraham, would I care? How about the Muslim? What if I called Muhammad? The truth is, I call my best friends bastards. It's kind of an endearing term to me. To me, it's symbolic of someone that does whatever they want to do, and I can appreciate that. Some of my favorite friends growing up were fatherless, and I always noted how free they were, how well-intended fatherly ideas about the world had not been placed on them. They seemed to have a certain lightness. I'm a Generation Xer, and to some extent, that means my parents weren't really around. And if they were, then I would leave the house. Very independent family system or dynamics in the 90s. And I suppose you could take anything personally, but you could also view something any way you choose. It's you that assigns the meaning. So enough of my ranting. Let's look at an island. This is an island just southwest of Hawaii, Johnston Island, and we're told it used to be an old military island. And what fascinated me was all the concrete and artificial coastline. I mean, the whole island is man-made, and it looks like there were hundreds of buildings here, and now everything has been scraped clean and is overgrown. In my last video, I will have discussed artificial coastlines, and we can see an artificial break all along this island. And in in fact, there's a whole bunch of islands out here, such as the Marshall Islands. And we see these artificial breaks and thousands of little islands. At first I thought maybe Epstein's Island was out here, but it's actually over here. We'll have a little look at that. Here we go. Little St. James. And this is what they say. I don't know. But in case you've ever wondered, as I did, they're saying this is it. Big house here, some kind of bunker, a lot of places to land helicopters. Here and one here. Not that impressive, actually. But back to this Johnston Atoll Island. It's an unincorporated territory of the United States, under jurisdiction of the United States Air Force. The island is closed to the public, so a lot of land being hoarded out here, south of Hawaii. It has been in U.S. military control since 1934. It was used as a naval refueling depot, an airbase, a testing site for nuke and biological weapons. Agent Orange. And despite all that, it's home to a thriving community of seabirds. And here we can see some of them. And here we can see a picture of what it looks like now. Pretty nice building right here. Really nice. Doesn't look military. And here's another neighboring island. And when we look at the footprint of these islands, it's like every inch was developed at one point. And were there people out here? Okay, maybe they did and do use it for something now. But the island is artificial. This is not a natural island. Similar to Star Forts. And what was this? Really? Perhaps this is too heavy. Let's go to Washington State and we see the same artificial building of land out here. In a past video, I will have discussed this break that cost $250 million to repair. It was already here. And if we follow it, which I did briefly but didn't talk about it in my last video, we can follow this break and it continues in this line. It jumps over this land or through. This may have been flooded. And it continues. This same artificial seawall continues inland and we can follow it here. Now what was this? It looks like we see train tracks here. So in the old world, it appears that this artificial break may have also had a train, but we don't see any signs of it on this side. And perhaps there was a tunnel that cut through here and popped out to these train tracks. Which ones are the tracks? I don't know. It looks like there's two sets. But we also see this perfect surveyed, as they were calling, jetty or ocean break. Now in ruins. No talk of it in the video that I watched. Nobody cared about this part. We can see it jutting out here a little bit. Again, were these tracks from the old world? It's not a far reach when we have tracks sitting right next to it. Here, 4 artificial points. Train continues, again jutting out into the water, continues, starting to fade out, starting to blend into the swamp, and now the train tracks disappear right here at this hiking trail. Gone. But we can still see their impression underneath. We continue, and we arrive at a star fort. And this has been on my radar for a while, but today is the day that we'll have a little look at this star fort. Fort Stevens. This history is so strange. If you've watched my channel for even a little bit, by now you see a pattern. For generations, people have believed this unbelievable history. This community is awesome, and I think we have succeeded. There's many levels to this research, but the first is very simple. What do they say? What do they say, and is this logical? Does it make any sense? And I think nothing makes sense. Every story, at least historical, for everything over 100 years old, is just that, a story, and not even a good one. Whoever wrote the stories were not builders. They didn't understand what it would actually take to accomplish the things we're given stories about. One such example is this Fort Stevens. So where is the fort? Here we're told this is an earthworks fort built in the 1860s. Again, looking like a treatment plant, but let's humor them. Let's just say that this was important in 1860 Oregon. It's right on the border of Washington and Oregon. So this is a fort, and everything around it is part of the fort. Again, we looked at these railroad tracks leading right to the fort and ending here. And what really interests me is what they're calling batteries. Here we can see the West Battery, and let's click on an image. Super complex Civil War stuff, if we're to believe the story. So the fort was constructed in 1 year, 1863 to 1864. 1864. We have to remember another part of history, the Lewis and Clark expedition. They found themselves in Oregon in 1805. Hello, Lewis. Why, hello, Clark. What a fine turtleneck you have. You're looking dashing yourself. Yes. So shortly after Lewis and good old Clark, they built this fort with hundreds of yards of concrete and steel. This is really being downplayed. It's being portrayed as a primitive fort. Most of it is buried, as I showed you a minute ago. And what we do see is hundreds of tons of concrete, essentially blending right into the landscape, partially buried, parts underground. And you can really see a lot of fascinating evidence left behind. A lot of gears and mechanisms, passageways. And we're told this thing was built way out here in the northwest corner of the nation for the Civil War. And again, I feel my job, at least on this channel, is not to say what this is. And I kind of think that's where our community may go astray time, including myself, when I think we make a better case of what is not. And we're running behind. I think we could do nothing but discuss the ridiculous nature of our history for a lifetime and do a great service to humanity. You have to understand this is all concrete. The fort was constructed in 1 year. How can we accept this? Who can accept this? Let's have a little look at this battery Pratt. Here's another angle. This doesn't make any sense. This concrete is pristine. Here's the battery Smur. Perfect. So that's it. You have the history all the way up until 1947 when the park is decommissioned. No discussion of all the concrete or how it was possibly built, but we do have a lot of information after the matter. Almost none for the construction and a lot of information about the end of its life. At the end of its life, the grounds were transferred to the Corps of Engineers until finally being turned over to the Oregon Parks and Recreational Department. So there we go. It went from military hands to the Corps of Engineers to the Parks Department. The chain of custody. Here we're told a team of paranormal investigators were allowed to explore the underground tunnels at the fort. The fort is also said to be haunted by a soldier. There you go. These kinds of stupid stories make their way into history, and yet not a damn peep about how this was even possible. Here's a random building. An abandoned power plant at Fort Stevens State Park. Look how beautiful this thing is. Just the shell. I would love this as my house. And this is an old Civil War Oregon ruin. They tell us this is the abandoned power plant. There we go. So they had a power plant at this fort. Here's a better look. And I'm really thankful this is still here. Doesn't look like a power plant. And it's amazing that you could just put a big toaster out here and people would be satisfied with the explanation. Here again, Civil War. This makes a lot of sense. Let's just drop a cannon in here that points at a wall. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. They're trying to make sense of it for us so that nobody thinks, so that nobody asks why and where did all the concrete come from. Here's another little look. A lot of graffiti on this one. I mean, let's go back to these old times. What have we forgotten? How come soldiers were so skilled? Not only could they fight, but they could create concrete cities in states before they were states. All with horse and wagon. I mean, just what we're seeing here. Just this view is at least $500,000 of steel and concrete. To mention the labor, the engineers? What about the engineers? The architects? Was the military in 1860 serving all these functions? I'm shocked. I never think I can be shocked when doing this research, and yet it happens every time. This is unbelievable early American construction that doesn't make any sense. So many stages. And I didn't read it, but they said the Corps of Engineers auctioned off the building. So everything that we're seeing is simply what's left. Most of it was sold off and demolished. So I think we'll look at something else and take a quick pause. Okay. Bonus? I have stuff scattered all over the place. I told myself find one more thing. A little note said Boularte de San Diego, and we touched on it briefly in a past video. This baby was built from 1591 to 1594. So this puts things in perspective. It's located within the walled city of Manila, Philippines. The bastion is built on the southwestern corner. It was altered in 1609 by this man. We must alter the fort, sir. He was a Spanish soldier, lawyer, and president. Excavations of the bastion San Diego were performed in 1979. And here is what they discovered. Unexcavated portions, brick tiles. So they're so certain about this history, and yet they're still excavating it. It's to say it was buried, yet they know everything about the history. In 1591. So again, circular structures, looking more like a wastewater facility or the guts of some large machine, some kind of tech, but not military in the 1500s. And really, quite possibly not much older than the ruins we were just looking at in Oregon. And yet we have a history going back to the 1500s. So it doesn't matter if the battle was 100 years ago or 500 years ago. Unexplained ruins in every part of this realm. And all people, at least most of them, seem satisfied with these explanations, while they live in structures far less superior than these. So for this week, I think that's all I've got. I thank you for joining me. I love you all. God bless, and I'll see you next week.